Hello and welcome back, future scientists. I'm Mr. K with Mississippi Public Broadcasting, and we're going to continue dissecting the science portion of the ACT today. What I really wanted to do is try to put the ball in your court a little bit. What I'm going to go over is some things that you students can do to prepare for the ACT. So I'm going to go over some tips and tricks and how you should be spending your time leading up to the ACT to increase your score. So let's go ahead and get the ball rolling and see what we're talking about today. So again, I wanted to talk about some preparation. What can you do to increase your score outside of class or outside of school? Well, you want to establish a starting point and set a goal, okay? Once you've taken a couple of these practice tests, you're going to figure out pretty quickly what you're struggling with. Is it time management? Is it a vocabulary thing? Are you not understanding how to find the information that you need? So once you've laid that groundwork and have a starting point, you want to ask yourself, why are we missing questions, right? Is it a reading comprehension? Are we doing bad on interpreting graphs? Or is it a vocabulary thing? These are all going to be things that I'm going to talk about to try to give you some ideas on how to improve those areas of the science portion of the ACT for you. Okay, so again, when you're making that starting point, what you want to do is complete multiple full-length timed practice tests. Okay, and then once you've done that, that's going to help you make a more realistic goal. Okay, I know this sounds like a lot of work, but remember that these tests are 40 minutes. So if you can dedicate an hour to practicing, if you do that once or twice a week, you know, you're going to be able to get this out of the way in no time, okay? Especially if the science portion is the part that you're really struggling on and you're not having to take the full ACT. This is something you can do in an afternoon after school, okay? Or even in a study hall class, okay? Once you've taken a couple of these tests, that's going to help you make more realistic goals based on the tests. And you also want to figure out that starting point and figure out what your goal is, because let's say you're at like a 20 on the science portion of the ACT. The steps that you take to get to a 23 are going to look a lot different than the steps you're going to have to take to get to a 27. So once you know where you're at, make a goal and then be realistic about that. If you're trying to score, if you're trying to improve your science section by more than 5 points, that's going to take a lot of effort, okay? But getting just 2 or 3 points on increasing your score by 2 or 3 points is a very manageable goal. So try to set a realistic goal. How much time are you really willing to dedicate to this? And that's going to help you kind of figure that out, okay? So here are some things we can do when we're getting ready for the test. This is test prep stuff. So once you've taken a couple of practice tests, I want you to ask yourself, what are you struggling with? Is it a time management thing? You don't know what the question's really asking you? Do you have trouble with a specific skill? Are you having trouble? Is it a scientific method, a graph literacy thing, or is it just the vocabulary? So once you've taken a couple of practice sections of the ACT, you're going to be able to answer these questions a little bit better, okay? And then you can focus your efforts on a specific skill. Overall, you're probably better off. You're going to be able to increase your score higher by focusing your efforts on 2 or 3 small things instead of just taking it over and over again and hoping that, you know, exposure is going to make it better. We know that a lot of the science portion of the ACT is interpreting graphs. So if there's any part of graph interpretation or anything like that that you're struggling with, if you just focus on getting better at answering questions with graphs, you're going to see a higher improvement than if you just keep taking the science portion over and over again and hoping that practice makes perfect there. So again, once you've taken this a couple times, keep track of the type of questions you're getting wrong and try to find skills that help you increase your score the most, okay? As far as it goes, as far as vocabulary goes, I wanted to talk about that a little bit too. So when you're taking practice tests, one habit you can get into is underlining unfamiliar words, okay? When you do that, a couple of different strategies might come up here. You might be able to practice context clues. So you might not know what a word means, but if you read it in conjunction with the whole sentence, you might be able to figure out what the definition is, okay? you want to look for definitions in the passages. A lot of the times, the science portion of the ACT will use these complex and crazy units of measurements that you don't normally see. But when they do that, they often define what the unit of measurement is. Sometimes it's in a footnote or in the key off to the side. So you might want to get some practice finding that information, okay? Make sure we're always looking at the key because there's usually information that we need to answer the questions there, okay? And then you also want to look for the definitions in the passages, like I said, but sometimes you don't even need to know what the word meaning is. Sometimes that word that you're getting hung up on is not crucial to answering the question. So as you're practicing and taking the ACT, ask yourself that too. Don't spend so much time trying to define a word. If you don't even need to know what that word is, you're just wasting your time, okay? What are some other things we can do? What are some other preparation strategies? Well, you want to practice reading scientific writing. And what I mean by this is skimming. When you are taking the science portion of the ACT, you don't have a lot of time. So how you read scientific writing and how you read for pleasure or in your English class is going to be very different. We need to get good at skimming for important information. And that skimming is going to look like finding those important units of measurements, finding those variables, the independent and dependent variables. You don't have to read every single word and comprehend the whole thing. These experiments are very complex, but you need to get good at reading it quickly and finding the information that's going to be useful. Some other things you can do is read data journalism, so scientific literature, scientific magazines, because they often have a lot of graphs that go along with them, and that's going to make it easier for you on the ACT to read a short description of what's going on and find the relevant information in the graph to go along with it. Okay, and then we also want to practice on graphs a lot. A lot of the science ACT is interpreting graphs, so if you have no idea where to start, that's a great place to start, is just to make sure you're really, really good on your graphic literacy. Some things you can do to improve your graphic literacy is improving the variables. The first thing you want to do is look at the X and Y variable on a graph. You're going to get questions about it, and the graph doesn't really make sense unless you know what the two variables are. You also want to look at the title of the table or the graph if there is one, and often look at the key. That's a big part of the ACT that when people do poorly on the science portion, that's usually one thing that they don't do. They don't go to find that key. The key helps you interpret the graph, so you want to be able to do that. Okay, another thing you want to practice is finding patterns and trends. So I kind of talked about it in an earlier unit. You want to be able to immediately identify direct correlations or indirect correlations, okay? If something has a direct relationship, that means that as one variable increases, the other variable increases. If you see that, you're probably going to get a question about it. An inverse relationship is the opposite. As one variable increases, the other variable decreases. If you see a strong trend, either direct or indirect, you're going to get a question on it. So you want to be able to identify those very quickly so that when you get to that question, you can answer it quickly and move on. Okay, and then generally you just want to be able to find information that's used to support a claim. So especially in that the conflicting viewpoints, you're going to get questions that, does this increase a scientist's point of view or go against the scientist's point of view? So these are all things that you can do to increase and prepare for the science portion of the ACT. Y'all, thank you so much for making it here today. Your teacher has some other work for you to do, so make sure to give that your best effort, and I hope everybody has a great day.